Karen kicked my crutches, didn't know I'm a war veteran. Part 1. My name is Daniel Cole, and if you asked anyone who knew me before the war, they'd tell you I was the guy who never stayed angry long. Always had a joke ready, even when life kicked me around. Maybe that's why when the worst day of my life unfolded in a downtown parking lot, I didn't react the way most people would expect. It was a crisp Saturday morning in early October, the kind of day where the air feels sharp and clean, hinting at the cold months ahead. I had a doctor's appointment for a new fitting on my prosthetic. The VA clinic was a few blocks away, but I needed a coffee first, something to brace me for the usual poking and prodding. The Starbucks near Main Street was packed. The sidewalk buzzed with the usual mix of shoppers, students, and the kind of people who acted like they owned the whole city. And then there was her, Karen. I didn't know her name then, of course. She was just a woman with frosted blonde hair, teased high enough to scrape the clouds, oversized sunglasses, and a voice that could strip paint off a wall. She was standing near her silver SUV, talking loudly on her phone, blocking the disabled parking ramp like it belonged to her. I maneuvered my way around her, struggling a little because the sidewalk was narrow. My crutches, worn but reliable, clicked steadily against the concrete. That's when it happened. She spun around, still mid-conversation, and barked, "Watch it, you lazy." Her voice caught for half a second when she saw the crutches, but only for half a second. And then with a sneer curling her mouth, she kicked one of my crutches. Not just nudged, kicked. I stumbled hard. My left side collapsed, my prosthetic leg twisted awkwardly under me as I hit the ground with a sickening thud. My coffee cup exploded across the pavement, splattering up my jacket and soaking the sleeve of my hoodie. Gasps erupted around us. A few people froze, unsure if they should intervene. Karen scoffed loudly and said, "Maybe if you people didn't fake being disabled, you wouldn't trip over yourselves." It took a second for me to push myself upright, face burning, not from pain but from humiliation. You people, I knew what she meant. She wasn't just talking about my disability. She saw my skin first. She saw the crutches second. A middle-aged woman nearby holding a shopping bag rushed over. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. I nodded stiffly, pushing back the urge to say something sharp. "Not yet, not here." Not for her, Karen was still ranting, taking up parking spots, slowing everyone down, making everything about you. People had started pulling out their phones, recording. Karen didn't notice or didn't care. She was too busy winding herself up, too sure of her own righteousness. "You're what's wrong with this country," she spat, crossing her arms tightly. I grabbed my crutch from where it had fallen, adjusted my footing, and stood tall as I could. A small crowd was gathering. Murmurs, outrage. "You don't know a damn thing about me," I said quietly, but my voice carried. "Oh, I know enough," Karen snapped. "I know you're a scammer playing victim to get handouts." There it was. The whole ugly truth of her heart laid bare in public under the mid-morning sun. My hands shook, not from weakness, but from the deep, seething burn of 1,000 insults, 1,000 judgments made by people like her. People who had no idea what it cost to stand here today. I reached into my jacket slowly. Karen tensed like she thought I was pulling a weapon, but I pulled out my VA card, held it up. Clear, unmistakable. U.S. Army 1st Infantry Division, I said, 2 tours. Afghanistan, wounded in service. For the first time, Karen's mouth snapped shut. The blood drained from her face, leaving her pale and exposed in the crowd's gaze. And then someone spoke up behind me. A man's voice, strong and angry. "You kicked a veteran's crutch." Another voice joined, a younger woman. "What's wrong with you?" An older man shaking his head. "Disgusting behavior." Karen looked around wild-eyed, now realizing the tide had turned against her. And fast. Someone was filming close-up now, phone camera inches from her horrified face. Another person was calling the police. I could hear it clear as day. "Yeah, we have an assault on a disabled vet downtown. We have footage." Karen tried to bluster. He tripped himself. I didn't." The videos would show otherwise. She backed toward her SUV, fumbling with her keys, hands trembling. But it was too late. Way too late. Karen's hands were shaking so badly that she dropped her keys twice. The metallic clatter against the pavement echoed unnaturally loud in the stunned silence that had descended over the sidewalk. No one moved to help her. Instead, they watched, phones still raised, recording every frantic, panicked gesture she made. I adjusted my crutches under my arms and stayed rooted where I was. Every instinct in me wanted to just turn away, disappear into the crowd, pretend this hadn't happened, but something deeper kept me standing there. Something called dignity, something called truth. You assaulted a disabled veteran. The man nearest to me said again louder this time, like he wanted the words to brand themselves into the brick walls around us. You're disgusting. Karen finally managed to grab her door handle, yanking it open like she thought she could escape inside her SUV and pretend none of this was happening. A younger woman in a beanie stepped between Karen and the door. Calm, resolute. You're not leaving, she said simply. The police are already on their way. Karen's face crumpled, an ugly mask of anger, fear, and disbelief. I didn't do anything, she screeched. Another bystander, an older woman holding a tote bag with a veteran's flag pin on her lapel, snapped back. We saw you. Everybody saw you. Karen looked at me, then at the growing crowd, her chest heaving with shallow, panicked breaths. She opened her mouth, probably to unleash another wave of excuses. That's when the first police cruiser pulled up. The officer who stepped out was a stocky man with a trimmed beard and a cool, no-nonsense gaze. His partner, a younger woman, moved quickly to the edge of the crowd, taking in the scene like someone who had seen this kind of thing too many times before I watched. As a chorus of voices rose, eager, furious, demanding justice. She kicked his crutches. He's a veteran, caught on video. The male officer approached me first, probably because I was the one visibly injured, leaning awkwardly on my battered crutches. Sir, are you all right? He asked, voice low and steady. I nodded once. I'm fine, bruised pride more than anything. He nodded back, his face softening slightly when he saw my VA card still clutched in my hand. Thank you for your service, he said. Karen, sensing the shift in tone, lurched forward with a fresh wave of indignation. She's lying, she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. He tripped over his own feet. I didn't touch him. The female officer turned to her, one eyebrow raised. We have multiple witnesses and video footage suggesting otherwise, ma'am. Please stay calm. I'm the victim here, Karen wailed. He's harassing me. The officers exchanged a glance, the kind of glance that spoke volumes without a word. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to step aside while we review the footage, the male officer said firmly. And if you don't calm down, you could be facing additional charges for resisting investigation. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She stumbled back, clutching her phone in a white-knuckled grip. Meanwhile, bystanders were offering to airdrop or email their videos directly to the officers. A woman with pink hair was already scrolling through her footage. Got it all, start to finish, she said grimly. I leaned against a bench trying to gather myself. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind an ache in my shoulder and a raw tightness in my throat. I wasn't embarrassed anymore. I was angry. After about 15 minutes of reviewing multiple angles of the incident, the officers approached me again. Sir, we're treating this as an assault, the male officer said. Would you like to press charges? I looked at Karen, now slumped on the curb, her hands shaking, her eyes red-rimmed. Part of me wanted to say no, to walk away, to be the bigger person, but another part of me, the part that had watched too many brothers and sisters come home broken only to be spat on by the country they served, knew better. Yes, I said clearly, I want to press charges. The officer nodded solemnly. Karen let out a keening, disbelieving wail that echoed across the parking lot. It didn't take long for the news to spread. By the time I made it inside, Starbucks still determined to get my damn coffee, my phone was blowing up. Apparently, some of the videos had already been posted online. The hashtags were trending locally. Darni Shurin veteran assaulted. Shakana Karen strikes again. Shakana justice for Dan. The story exploded faster than anyone could have expected. People were furious. Veteran groups reposted the videos with captions like, "This is how we treat our heroes." Local news anchors picked it up within the hour, interviewing bystanders who had seen everything. It wasn't just an ugly incident anymore. It was a symbol, a flashpoint. Later that afternoon, I sat in my small, cluttered apartment, watching the coverage replay on TV. They blurred Karen's face, at least for now, but it didn't matter. Everyone in town knew her. Her name, her job, her past behaviors. Turns out this wasn't her first incident. Karen had a history, a string of complaints about harassment, verbal abuse, even minor assaults at the local grocery store and post office. Nobody had ever caught her so publicly before. Until now, by Monday morning, Karen had been fired from her job at a real estate agency. Her HOA, the one she'd basically ruled with an iron fist for years, released a statement condemning her actions and removing her from her post. Her Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn pages were flooded with angry comments. Veterans organizations organized a small rally downtown in my honor. People I didn't even know sent me thank you notes, flowers, donations. One man drove 3 hours just to shake my hand. I didn't know what to do with all of it. I hadn't asked to be a symbol. I was just a guy who wanted a coffee. Karen, meanwhile, disappeared from public view. Some said she was hiding out at a cousin's house. 2 counties over, others claimed they saw her sobbing in her SUV at the edge of town. I didn't care. I had enough scars to carry already. But part of me wondered if she would ever understand the depth of what she had done. It wasn't just about me. It was about every person who looked different, every person who walked slower, every person who carried invisible wounds that people like her refused to see. 1 week later, at a town hall meeting organized by the mayor and the local veterans committee, something unexpected happened. Karen showed up. I didn't see her at first. The town hall was packed wall to wall with residents, veterans, reporters, and local officials. Folding chairs creaked under the weight of tension and outrage. American flags lined the walls. Banners read, "Honor those who served." When I was asked to speak, my heart thudded painfully against my ribs. Public speaking was never my thing. Facing enemy fire had been easier than facing 100 expectant faces. I gripped the podium with both hands steady, firm the way they taught us to stand when addressing superior officers. The scars under my jacket itched, but I ignored them. I didn't come here today looking for attention. I started my voice rough. And I sure as hell didn't ask to become a hashtag. A few chuckles rippled through the crowd, easing the tension. I just wanted a coffee. I said simply, I just wanted to move through the world without having to explain myself. I paused, breathing deep. I served because I believed in something bigger than myself, and I lost a part of myself over there. But what hurts more than losing a leg is coming home and feeling like you're still fighting to be seen as human. There was a silence so heavy you could have cut it with a knife. My injuries don't make me a hero, I said, and they sure don't make me a burden. They make me, I swallowed hard, a reminder that freedom costs something, that dignity should be given freely, not earned through suffering. I leaned closer to the mic. And the way we treat our wounded, our vulnerable, our neighbors says more about us than anything else. There was a long beat, and then the room erupted into applause. People stood. Veterans saluted. A few women wiped tears from their eyes. I stepped back, breathing hard, heart pounding, and that's when I saw her, Karen, standing near the back wall, half hidden behind a support pillar, her arms wrapped tightly around herself, her face pale, stripped bare of the usual armor of entitlement and outrage. She looked small, not the towering, raging Karen from the parking lot, just a woman broken in a different way. After the speeches, people swarmed around me. Handshakes, back pats, words of thanks I didn't know how to respond to. I was exhausted. I needed air. I was halfway down the hall when I heard hurried footsteps behind me. I turned and there she was, Karen, face, blotchy eyes, red-rimmed. She stopped a few feet away, wringing her hands like she didn't know what to do with them. I tensed automatically, bracing for another confrontation, but instead she whispered, voice shaking, "I'm sorry." The words were so small, so raw, I almost didn't hear them. She looked up, and for the first time I saw something that wasn't rage or arrogance. I saw shame. I saw fear. I saw a woman grappling with the ugly truth about herself. I didn't know," she choked out. "I thought." She trailed off helpless. I nodded slowly. "I know what you thought," I said quietly. Her hands trembled. Tears spilled over her cheeks unchecked. "I don't have an excuse," she whispered. "I was angry at everything at my life, and I took it out on you. I see that now." She looked around at the veterans in uniform, at the flags, at the families with little kids clutching miniature American flags, and she flinched like the sight of them physically hurt her. "I don't expect you to forgive me," she said, voice cracking. I just, I had to say it. I'm sorry. Truly sorry." I studied her. There was no smugness now, no superiority, no self-righteousness. Just a woman standing in the wreckage of her own choices. I could have walked away. I could have turned my back on her the way she had turned her back on me that morning. But that's not what I fought for. Not what I bled for. Change, I said slowly, doesn't happen from saying sorry once. She nodded rapidly, desperate. "But it's a start." I finished. She looked like she might collapse from the force of her relief. I gave a small nod. Nothing more, and I turned and walked away, each step on my crutches, ringing out steady and sure across the polished floor. The story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, Karen showed up at veteran events, not to be seen, not to be praised, but to volunteer, quietly, unobtrusively. She helped set up chairs at the VFW hall. She organized care packages for wounded soldiers. She cleaned up trash after parades. No cameras, no social media posts, just showing up, doing the work. One afternoon, months later, I sat at a local diner with a few other vets, laughing over bad coffee and worse jokes, when the door jingled open. Karen walked in. She spotted us, hesitated, and then walked to another table across the room, giving us space. She didn't pretend we were friends. She didn't intrude, but she nodded once. Respectful, small, real, and for the first time I nodded back. Sometimes the world doesn't change all at once. Sometimes it changes one broken, stubborn heart at a time. And sometimes dignity isn't about demanding apologies. It's about making damn sure you never need one again. Part 2, Chapter 1, Viral Justice. By the time Sunday rolled around, the video had exploded beyond anything I could have imagined. It wasn't just local news anymore. It was national major news. Outlets were airing clips, talk shows were debating it, morning hosts were shaking their heads in disbelief at yet another Karen incident gone viral. And everywhere my name, Daniel Cole, was being dragged into the spotlight. I hadn't asked for it, didn't crave it, but there it was. Karen's face was all over the internet too. Unblurred now, screenshots, memes, reaction videos. One clip showed her kicking my crutch in slow motion, captioned "the kick that shook the nation," and the comments were brutal. "Imagine assaulting a disabled veteran, absolute trash hope. She enjoys unemployment. She's the reason we can't have nice things." By noon, Karen's personal Facebook had been hacked. Her home address leaked, her employer's page flooded with one-star reviews. I should have felt vindicated. Maybe part of me did, but mostly I felt tired. Justice didn't always feel as good as you thought it would. Chapter 2, Fallout. Karen's downfall wasn't slow, it was a free fall. First, the real estate agency she worked for announced her termination in a blunt, cold press release. Then her HOA, the one she had lorded over like a petty dictator, held an emergency vote. A unanimous decision. Karen Mitchell was officially banned from any leadership roles. Her so-called friends ghosted her overnight. No one wanted to be associated with the woman who kicked a disabled veteran. She was blacklisted from local businesses. Some restaurants even had photos of her taped near the register. We reserved the right to refuse service. It was more than social exile. It was complete obliteration, and it didn't stop there. Her adult children, 2 sons in their late 20s, posted public statements distancing themselves from her. "Our mother's actions do not reflect our values. We stand with Daniel Cole and all veterans." The betrayal must have stung worse than the internet backlash. Chapter 3, Isolation. 3 weeks after the incident, I heard through a neighbor that Karen had been forced to move in with her sister 2 towns over. Her house, once pristine with neatly trimmed hedges and aggressively patriotic decorations, sat abandoned. No flags, no wreaths, just a for sale sign sagging in the winter wind. Some kids had vandalized the yard. Someone threw eggs at the garage door. It was ugly. And as much as I hated what she had done, part of me wondered if this level of hatred was too much. She deserved consequences. But this was exile. Chapter 4, Breaking Point. In early November, I got a knock on my door. It was Karen's youngest son, Mike Tall. nervous, holding his hat in his hands like he was back in Sunday school. I just wanted to say thanks, he said awkwardly. I blinked at him. Thanks for not pressing for jail time. You could have ruined her life even worse. I didn't know how to respond. Mike shifted uncomfortably. She's not who she was, he said quietly. Or maybe she always was and we just didn't see it. He shook his head, eyes misting. I'm sorry for what she did to you, and thank you for showing everyone who she really was. Before I could reply, he shoved his hat back on his head and hurried away down the sidewalk. Chapter 5. A Community Divided. You would think the town would rally around me. Most did, but not everyone. There were whispers, muted but persistent. Why couldn't he just let it go? Did he have to ruin her whole life over one mistake? She said sorry, didn't she? I tried to ignore it, but it ate at me. Was I the villain now too? Was standing up for myself somehow worse than letting her kick me to the ground? I sat with those thoughts late into the night, staring at my old army medals on the shelf, wondering if honor still meant anything in a world so quick to blame the wrong people. Chapter 6. The Protest. The real explosion came during the Veterans Day Parade. I had been invited to ride in one of the honored vehicles, waving, smiling, pretending to feel worthy. Halfway through Main Street, a group of maybe 20 people holding signs that read, "Forgive Karen and one mistake doesn't define a life," staged a protest. They booed when my name was announced. They waved Karen's old HOA newsletters in the air like banners. It was surreal. Bystanders shouted them down, but the damage was done. The narrative had shifted. I was no longer just a wounded veteran. I was a symbol of a community tearing itself apart over how much forgiveness someone deserved. Chapter 7. Doubts. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the footage, hearing her voice in my head, feeling the crunch of my crutch hitting the ground. Was I wrong? Had I let my anger do this? Had I become the villain? In the dim light of my apartment, I stared at the crutches leaning by the door. Not the cheap ones from the hospital, the custom ones, the ones the VA had fitted for me after months of physical therapy. They weren't just metal and rubber. They were survival. They were proof. I wiped my eyes roughly. I wasn't the villain, and neither was forgiveness an obligation. Chapter 8. A Letter. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived. No postage, hand-delivered. It was from Karen. The handwriting was shaky but careful. Daniel, I don't expect you to read this. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just needed you to know losing everything made me see what I was too proud to admit. I wasn't just cruel to you, I was cruel to everyone for years. Friends, family, neighbors. You weren't the reason I fell. I was already falling. You just made the world see it. Thank you for being stronger than I ever was. Karen, I sat there for a long time after reading it. The letter crumpled slightly in my fist. Some wounds never close clean. Some redemption comes bleeding and messy. But maybe it comes all the same. Chapter 9. The Court Summons. Just when I thought things were finally settling down, the envelope arrived, cream-colored, official-looking. Inside a court summons, Karen was pressing for a civil hearing, claiming the harassment, threats, and online mobs that followed her after the incident had irreparably damaged her life and mental health. I stared at the paper, stunned. After everything, she was suing me. It didn't matter that she had kicked me. It didn't matter that she had apologized. Now in a courtroom, it would all be twisted into a circus. Chapter 10. Preparing for battle, I met with a lawyer the next day, a woman named Sandra Nguyen, a sharp, no-nonsense attorney recommended by the local Veterans Alliance. She flipped through the summons, her mouth tightening. "This is a PR move," she said flatly. "She's trying to flip the narrative, paint herself as the victim now." I nodded grimly. "Can she win?" Sandra shrugged. "Courts aren't about truth. They're about perception, and sympathy sells." I sat back, feeling the weight of it settle onto my chest. Karen wasn't done tearing my life apart. She was just getting creative about it. Chapter 11. Trial by Fire. The hearing was set for early December. Cold air bit at my skin as I stood outside the courthouse, crutches crunching lightly against the frost-dusted sidewalk. A crowd had gathered, half holding signs that said "Justice for Veterans," half holding signs that read, "Forgive and forget." Reporters circled like vultures. Karen arrived wearing a muted gray dress, minimal makeup, looking every bit the picture of regret and fragility. She clutched a worn Bible in her hands as if it were a shield. My stomach twisted. This wasn't about justice anymore. This was a performance, and the world loves a good redemption arc, even if it's a lie. Chapter 12. Karen's Testimony. When Karen took the stand, she wept almost immediately. "I never meant to hurt anyone." She sobbed. "I was under stress. Personal issues, financial hardships. I wasn't myself." Her lawyer painted a vivid picture: a once respected community member, a hardworking mother, a woman crushed under the weight of a single mistake. The courtroom murmured sympathetically. I gripped my crutches tighter. No one mentioned the years of bullying, the dozens of previous complaints, the trail of broken relationships left in her wake. One mistake. It was a lifetime of cruelty finally exposed. Chapter 13. My turn. When it was my turn to testify, the courtroom felt colder somehow. I stood tall, crutches steady, and looked the jury straight in the eye. "I didn't ask for this," I said simply. "All I wanted that morning was a coffee." I told them about the kick, the humiliation, the months of surgeries, therapy, trying to build a new life after war, only to be treated like garbage by someone who couldn't see past her own hate. I didn't cry. I didn't need to. The truth stood tall enough on its own. Chapter 14. Verdict. It took the jury only 3 hours to deliberate. They ruled in my favor. Unanimous. Karen's claims were dismissed. She was ordered to pay my legal fees and issue a public apology under court supervision. The courtroom exploded into a flurry of reactions. Karen broke down sobbing. Her lawyer looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. And me, I just exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. It was over. At least legally. Chapter 15. Aftermath. Karen's apology aired on local TV 2 nights later. She sat stiffly in front of a microphone reading from a prepared statement. "I apologize unreservedly to Daniel Cole and all veterans whom I disrespected by my actions. I acknowledge the harm I caused and will work toward becoming a better person." Her voice was hollow empty. I wondered if she believed a word of it. Maybe that didn't matter anymore. Maybe some lessons have to be carved into your life like scars. Chapter 16. Lessons in Forgiveness. A few days later, I visited the VA hospital to meet some new veterans returning home. Young faces, fresh wounds. Some physical, some deeper. One kid, barely 20, asked me how I stayed so calm through everything. I smiled sadly. "You don't fight because you hate what's in front of you." I said, "You fight because you love what's behind you." Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't for Karen. It was for me, so I could move forward without dragging her weight behind me like another broken limb. Chapter 17. A New Beginning. On Christmas Eve, I found myself standing on the porch of my new house, a little place just outside town, big enough for me and my dog, Rocky small enough to feel like safety. Neighbors waved, some dropped off cookies and welcome cards. No one looked at me like a burden or a hero or a headline. Just a man living, healing, starting over, and somewhere out there. Karen Mitchell was doing the same, whether she deserved it or not. Part 3. Chapter 1. A cold January morning. It happened on a freezing Thursday morning in mid-January. I was walking Rocky down Maple Avenue, bundled in my thickest jacket, crutches, tapping a slow rhythm on the icy sidewalk. The air bit at every exposed inch of skin, and breath hung in heavy white clouds. Rocky barked once, short, sharp. That's when I heard it. Screaming, panicked, high-pitched, cutting through the cold like a siren. Without thinking, I swung around, heart slamming into my ribs. Across the street, a minivan had jumped. The curb crashed into a light pole and was now smoking heavily. A woman stumbled from the driver's side, blood on her forehead, screaming for help. A toddler's cries came from the back seat. And the woman was Karen Mitchell. Chapter 2. Instinct. For a split second, I froze. It was her, the woman who had humiliated me, sued me, tried to paint herself as the victim. Part of me wanted to turn away. Let someone else handle it. But instinct kicked in faster than bitterness. I shoved Rocky's leash into a neighbor's hands and crutched across the street. Heart pounding, Karen was trying desperately to yank the back door open, but it was jammed, crushed inward by the impact. "Step back," I barked. Without thinking, I threw down my crutches balanced on my prosthetic and heaved at the twisted door frame. Pain flared through my shoulders. Metal screamed in protest. The latch gave. I pulled the door open just wide enough to unbuckle the sobbing toddler, cradling the kid close to my chest as I staggered back. Karen collapsed to the ground, sobbing. Chapter 3. Sirens. By the time paramedics and firefighters arrived, I was sitting on the curb, the child bundled in my arms, shivering but safe. Karen sat a few feet away, head buried in her hands, shoulders racked with silent, heaving sobs. A firefighter helped her to her feet. A paramedic crouched beside me, checking me over for injuries. "You just saved that kid's life," he said quietly. I didn't respond. Couldn't. All I could do was stare at Karen, at the broken, shattered woman who had once kicked my crutches out from under me, and who now clung to the curb like it was the only thing holding her together. Chapter 4. Headlines. The story hit the news that same afternoon, but this time the headlines read differently. Veteran saves child from crash. Former accuser among those rescued photos showed me carrying the toddler away from the wreckage. Rocky barking fiercely in the background. Social media exploded again. But the tone was different. Pride, gratitude. All Karen's name surfaced too, but this time mostly in shame. People commented, after everything she did, "He still saved her family. That's real character. That's real strength. True heroes forgive even when others don't deserve it." Chapter 5. A knock on my door. 3 days later, Karen showed up at my door. She didn't look like the woman from before. No makeup, no bravado. Just exhaustion and raw humility. Her hand trembled as she clutched a paper bag full of homemade food. "I know I'm the last person you want to see," she said quietly. "But you saved my grandson. You saved us, and I needed to thank you." I didn't say anything. Didn't invite her in. Just stood there holding the door frame like it was the only thing keeping me upright. "I'm sorry," she said again. Voice cracking, "for everything, not just for the crutch, not just for the lawsuit, for all the years I spent looking down on people I didn't even know." Tears ran freely down her cheeks. "I was wrong about you, about everything." Chapter 6. Forgiveness. Forgiveness isn't some grand moment. It's not fireworks and tears and swelling music. It's quiet, hard, messy. It's standing on a frozen porch with a woman who hurt you and realizing that holding on to hate won't heal you. "I'm not doing this for you," I said quietly. She nodded quickly, understanding. "I know." I took the paper bag from her hands. "Thank you," I said, not because I needed the food, because sometimes small mercies are all we get, because sometimes the only way forward is through a door you swore you'd never open again. Chapter 7. Redemption in Progress. After that night on my porch, I didn't see Karen around town for a while. It was like she disappeared into the background, a ghost haunting her own past, but she hadn't vanished. Not really. 2 weeks later, flyers started popping up at the library, the community center, the local diner, Veterans Appreciation Drive, organized by Karen Mitchell. I stared at the flyer, heart pounding with something between suspicion and disbelief. There it was, an invitation to donate coats, blankets, and supplies for homeless veterans across 3 neighboring counties. No branding, no fancy photo ops. Just a quiet call for help. It wasn't about Karen. It wasn't about her image. It was about us. Chapter 8. Showing up out of sheer curiosity, or maybe something deeper. I decided to show up at the first event. The community hall smelled like coffee and old wood polish. Tables were stacked with supplies. A few veterans milled around chatting quietly. And there she was, Karen, wearing jeans, an old sweatshirt, and no makeup. She was moving boxes, setting up tables, handing out coffee, not giving speeches, not asking for attention, just working. She spotted me from across the room and froze a box of winter coats cradled in her arms. For a second, I thought she might bolt, but she straightened her shoulders, nodded once, and kept working. No words, no drama, just respect. Chapter 9, Conversations. Later that afternoon, as the crowd thinned out, I found myself standing next to her by the donation bins. Awkward silence stretched between us. Finally, Karen cleared her throat. "I'm not here for forgiveness," she said, voice low. "I know I don't deserve it." I nodded. "I'm not here to hand it out." I said, "I'm just here for the vets." She smiled, a small broken thing, and nodded too. It was enough for now. Chapter 10. Deeper Cuts. Word about Karen's efforts spread slowly. Not everyone bought it. Some called it performative. Some accused her of trying to rebuild her reputation. Maybe part of them was right. Maybe part of her still craved redemption in the eyes of the public. But every time I saw her hauling heavy boxes, sweeping floors, handing out meals without once stepping in front of a camera, I knew at least some part of her was sincere. Pain has a way of burning away the lies we tell ourselves, and Karen Mitchell had been burned down to her bones. Chapter 11. The Banquet. 3 months after the accident, the town hosted its annual Veterans Appreciation Banquet. It was a formal event, black ties, long dresses, polished speeches. I wasn't going to go. I hated ceremonies, hated the way people looked at me like I was something broken to be pitied. But my buddy Mike Karen's son convinced me. "You deserve to be there, man," he said. "You earned it." So I went. And across the room, sitting quietly at a back table in a simple black dress, was Karen. No spotlight, no fanfare, just presence. Chapter 12, Full Circle. When they called my name for the Community Hero Award, I hesitated. Spotlights burned against my skin as I crutched my way up to the stage. Applause thundered through the hall. But my eyes weren't on the cameras or the politicians or the audience. They found Karen. And for a moment, just a moment, she smiled. Not a proud, self-congratulatory smile, a grateful one. Because even broken people can learn. Even cruel people can change. I accepted the plaque with a nod, my heart full of something heavier and better than pride. Hope to Chapter 13. When the sirens came again. Spring came late that year. The ice finally melted from the sidewalks, and the flowers along Main Street started pushing their way toward the sunlight. I was at the community center one afternoon, helping organize supplies for a charity run, supporting PTSD programs for veterans. Karen was there too, of course. Working silently, always the first to show up, the last to leave. That's when the sirens screamed through town again. Ambulance police people froze. Someone sprinted inside, gasping. "There's a fire. The old Jefferson house. A fire. An old man, Mr. Jefferson, a retired Navy chief, had been living alone in that falling down house for years." I didn't even think I dropped the clipboard and headed straight for the scene. Chapter 14. Into the Fire. By the time I arrived, black smoke billowed from the upstairs windows. Neighbors stood uselessly in the street watching the inferno grow. I spotted a firefighter struggling to haul a heavy ladder around the back of the house. And then I saw her, Karen. Without hesitation, she was already halfway up the porch steps, coughing into her sleeve, screaming Mr. Jefferson's name. "Get back!" Someone yelled at her, but she didn't listen. She yanked open the battered front door and vanished inside. For one horrifying heartbeat, time stopped, and then instinct kicked in. I threw my crutches aside and hobbled after her as fast as my leg would allow. Chapter 15. Smoke and Memory. Inside, the smoke was suffocating. Every breath burned. I staggered through the living room following Karen's frantic shouts, up the stairs, down a hallway, into a bedroom engulfed in smoke. Karen had found Mr. Jefferson disoriented, half-conscious, and was trying to pull him up. She wasn't strong enough alone. Together, coughing and gasping, we hauled him back toward the stairs. Karen slipped once, nearly falling through a rotted floorboard, but she caught herself, teeth, gritted, tears streaming from the smoke. We made it outside just as the porch began to collapse behind us. Firefighters grabbed Mr. Jefferson. Paramedics rushed to treat him. Karen collapsed to her knees in the dirt, sobbing uncontrollably, and I stood there, chest heaving, staring down at her. At the woman who had once kicked my crutches out from under me and who had just risked her life without hesitation. Chapter 16. Turning Point. The town turned out in full force for Mr. Jefferson's recovery fundraiser. Doctors said he would have died from smoke inhalation if Karen hadn't acted so fast. The news coverage was different this time. There were no memes, no hashtags, just quiet acknowledgement. A single headline summed it up perfectly. The Power of Change. Karen Mitchell's redemption story. I watched it all unfold from a distance. No interviews for me. No cameras. I didn't want credit. Karen didn't either. She stayed silent, refused interviews, never tried to capitalize on what she'd done. And somehow that said more than any words ever could. Chapter 17. The Conversation We Never Had. Weeks later, Karen and I crossed paths again at the community garden. She was planting tomato seedlings. I was dropping off a bag of fertilizer. We stood side by side in the sunshine, not speaking. Finally, she broke the silence. I don't expect you to ever forget, she said, voice rough. I wouldn't. If I were you. I didn't look at her, just kept staring at the neat rows of green. But, she said quietly, I hope someday you'll remember more than just the worst parts of me. I let the silence stretch long and heavy. Then finally I said, I already do. Karen turned her head sharply, eyes wide, hopeful, but I was already walking away, Rocky trotting at my side. Some things didn't need saying. Some things were written in the dirt, the smoke, the scars we shared, and in the quiet mercy of second chances. Part 4. Chapter 1. A New Season. By the time summer rolled around, our town had begun to heal. The bitterness faded slowly, like winter frost retreating from the fields. New shops opened, community events filled the calendar. People started talking about the future again instead of the past. And somehow, without ceremony or fanfare, Karen Mitchell became part of it. Quietly, humbly. She volunteered at the VA hospital every week. She organized coat drives in the winter school supply collections in the fall. She never brought up what had happened. Neither did I. Some things don't need to be spoken to be understood. Chapter 2. The Veterans Wall. In late August, the mayor unveiled a new project. The Veterans Honor Wall, a mural downtown dedicated to the town's veterans past and present. Names were etched into polished stone, stories written in brass. When they asked me if I wanted to attend the unveiling, I hesitated. Part of me still hated being in the spotlight. Part of me still hated being remembered only for what I had lost. But Rocky gave a sharp bark at my hesitation, like he knew better. So I went. And there among the crowd standing near the back was Karen, not waving, not drawing attention, just witnessing. When my name was called, I stepped forward. People clapped. Some cried. I didn't look at the cameras. I looked at the wall, the names of people who had sacrificed everything, and I felt something loosen inside me. Not pride, not pain. Peace. Chapter 3. Letting Go. A week after the ceremony, I received a small package at my door. No return address. Inside was a simple plaque, hand-carved from wood. It read, "Forgiveness is not forgetting. Forgiveness is letting go of the weight." There was no signature, no note, but I knew who it was from. I hung it above my fireplace where the late afternoon light hit it just right, turning the letters into gold. And for the first time since I came home from war, since that Starbucks sidewalk, since the crutches hit the ground, I let it go. All of it. Chapter 4. The Road Ahead. Life moved on. I started working part-time at the VA, mentoring younger veterans adjusting to civilian life. Rocky became a therapy dog for kids struggling with anxiety. Karen opened a nonprofit quietly dedicated to supporting disabled veterans and first responders. She never put her name on it, never asked for credit, just did the work. And when our paths crossed at fundraisers, at the community garden, at small-town parades, we exchanged nods, brief smiles, a shared understanding. Not friends, not enemies. Something better. Two broken souls who had learned in the hardest possible way that healing isn't a straight line. It's a choice you make every single day. I don't think I'll ever forget the woman who kicked my crutches or the woman who ran into a burning house. They're the same person. And maybe that's the point. We are all the worst and best parts of ourselves wrapped up in second chances and stubborn hope. I am not just what was taken from me overseas. I am not just the man who fell on a sidewalk. I am not just the veteran you see on a wall. I am someone who got back up, and so in her own way is Karen Mitchell. The end.